Okay, so we're going to start with a simple, basic play, the first of Manciolino's 7 methods for fighting somebody with sharp swords. By that he means when you're not playing around with, back then they did use blunt swords, rebated swords. They talked about it. It's called spada dall'agocchie, play sword. And meaning, like we get together on a Friday, we fence each other. We're not trying to kill each other. But they would at times use sharp swords. He called that spada da filo, sharp sword. And in those conditions, not everything went the same. There's a lot of things that Manciolino, said you can do when you're play fighting, but he said when you go to fight with sharp swords, shouldn't do this. Stick with a certain number of things. And he listed 7, although much of what he did with the sword and buckler is still meant to be converted to the sword alone. That is true. But he gave us these 7 plays for sword unaccompanied. Now he says that we will begin in porta di ferro stretta. He doesn't state what the other person's guard is, but porta di ferro is nice as well, although it doesn't have to be. So I will press my opponent. I will be so what is this pressing all about? The first principle of Bolognese fencing from all of the masters is that you should wait for your opponent to attack you first, because in doing so, he uncovers himself, he becomes more vulnerable, and I can wait here in a settled guard and defend from a steady, watchful position. But if he won't, this is what this represents. I've already waited, he won't attack me, so I make him attack me. That's how intent I am that he be the first to attack. I force him to, by pressing him. Stringere. The method of moving in Bolognese fencing is always that we shrink this space between the feet and then expand it. Okay, go smaller, then wider. We don't go wider and then narrower, wider. That is the reverse of the Bolognese footwork method. Go smaller, then wider, a couple of times until you get uncomfortably close, that you're forcing the other person to attack. Now, I want him to attack me. I don't want him to attack my sword. And he will attack my sword if it's right up in his face in a very strong way. He's not going to like that. He certainly won't try to attack me with this in his way. So I don't want to keep it in his way. I take it out of his way. Not drastically. I'm not going down into porta ferro larga. I'm just letting this point go offline a bit, maybe a little lower, so it's not really in his mind. When he sees me coming toward him, he thinks he can do that. Okay. So that's going to be the premise of all of Manciolino's work for the sharp sword, is that we press our opponent into attacking us. If they retreat, so be it. Then we start again. He presents more than one type of attack that could occur, but in this first example, it's a thrust. And we'll see how to deal with that thrust. Now, also what's important about this thrust, as opposed to some of the examples of his 7 plays, this thrust is sincere. So that as I press my opponent and get uncomfortably close with my sword offline, he goes to hit the face, and he does say face, with sincerity, close enough to do so. So that you have to, when you press somebody, you have to be aware and ready for the fact that they will try to hit you quickly there, because we're reducing the measure. Now, it's also possible that he realizes I'm trying to get him to come in, and obviously, therefore, I have a plan, and he might not want to. That's the subject of plays 2, 3, 4, and 5, where he decides that's probably not a good idea. He'll do that, but he'll feint that, and then get me with a second intention. It's important to understand the structure of this. But in this first example, he's going to try to hit me. So I press. He goes to hit me. I will parry that with a falso. Now, the object here is, if this is right here in front of my face, that I want to clear it from my face. I don't want it at my face. I need to eject it from that space. I do this with my wrist, a falso, and that is with my débellé. There's no movement of the feet here. I hit that. Now, when I hit that, do I have to stop in the center, in guardia di faccia? No, he does not say that, not here. And when he does say that, it's for very specific reasons, and we'll go over that, because he does say that in this play, just not here. So we'll get to that. Make it so that your face is the target for your opponent. Gather, step, small. If you make a big one, he could attack you. See, that's the point of gathering and advancing with this pressing footwork. That's why I didn't take my front foot and move it forward, because he could attack me in that moment when I'm unprepared. Still, even when I gather and then step, I don't want to make a big step, because again, he could attack me in that moment of a big step. I don't want my front foot off the floor for a long time. I want my front foot off the floor for the shortest possible amount of time. So it's a small step. I'm ready. I'm ready to do that. I'm always front foot. So you see the readiness of that kind of step, that I'm ready when he goes for it. I won't be out of position. So do your feet that way. Get close, hit that by turning your wrist, snapping that using your déballé, and it's okay for your sword to be over here. Perfectly all right. Don't raise this. If I raise that, I'll hit him in the head. Fight over. He got a falso in the right temple. That's not the play. Okay? And I'm not retracting my foot. I'm firm-footed, hitting a falso into that, knocking it clear away from my face. When you look at the illustration in the book of Achille Marozzo, he's got Porta di Ferro in a very wide stance, and this back foot is turned, so the body is very strongly aligned forward. And that's great for Marozzo. Marozzo, if you go through all of his material, never stringere anybody with a sword. Okay? He never presses people. And I believe it's maybe why, because he's standing in this way, and it's kind of awkward to try to press somebody with your stance in that way. He does so with pole arms, with partisan, but that's a more sideways stance with a partisan, and it lends itself more toward that kind of footwork. But Manciolino says, when you form Porta di Ferro stretta, that you have a bend in your front knee and a bend in your rear knee. So that means this has to turn and get a little closer and bend, which turns the hips into a more sideways position. That is what Manciolino said. And that position lends itself toward more easily this pressing footwork of driving your front foot forward with your rear foot. So be aware of that. I love the Marozzo guard. It's great. Like I said, when is there a case of Marozzo pressing anybody with a sword in his hand? He never does in all the hundreds of his plays. So stand firm. It's a very firm, aggressive way to stand. It's very strong to receive attacks in. But if you want to press, like Manciolino will tell you to do, you got to stand like Manciolino tells you to, more this way. Now you can do this footwork more comfortably. Okay. I differentiate between the guards. If I do Marozzo, I stand like he said. If I do Manciolino, I stand like he said. You know, if we're going to do Manciolino's material for solo spada, we shouldn't be starting here to each other, because I've got to press him. As soon as I do, he's got me. That's not how they fought at that measure. That's not Bolognese. I'm starting out here, where I can press him and try to get him to attack me. Now, when he does, this becomes that. You see why this falso, it's okay that this falso goes over here, because right away becomes a half mandrito, not a full one, a half one, meaning the point doesn't go through a high guard. This turns right over and strikes through that thigh. And so you see where it stops here, not past colunga stretta, and you see the turn of the body that Angelo Vigiani so well described. So you strike this with your déballé and throw this half reverso to the leg, and you see the movement of the body here. Now that becomes another attack. There comes some attacks here in very fast succession. These all happen in the blink of an eye. You do this, that, and strike right up in here, a falso, rising, striking the arm. And you see again, there's a turn of the body to deliver this. We don't just throw the sword around without involving the body. We just don't. Again, read Vigiani, to the great description of how you move the body when you make cuts. Now here is where Manciolino says, don't go past guardia di faccia. That's very curious. What does he mean? If I've made this half reverso down here, I make a falso going up in this direction. That cut does not normally, naturally terminate into guardia di faccia. He doesn't mean that. What he means is there's another way to throw a falso, very commonly done, sopra il braccio, over the arm. Very commonly done. It's all over the place. Here, he does not want that. He wants you to stop where guardia di faccia normally lies, which is in the center. So he's not saying that this ends in this position. That would be unnatural and unnecessary, especially considering what follows. Just stop it here rather than sending it over your arm. That's what he meant. He mentions this idea 2 times in all 7 of his plays about throwing something not past guardia di faccia. And so why? And in this case, it's a falso from this side. In another case, he's talking about the falso here that you make when you make that parry. Why does he say that? Because of what follows. In both cases, when he says, don't go past guardia di faccia, what follows is a mandrito. And here's, you'll see that. So I've pressed, I've made this here, over here, throw this through the leg and strike here, not past here, because what follows here is a mandrito. He says a cut that makes me fall back into porta di ferro stretta. That could be a squalembrato, could be a fendente, really, but it's a mandrito. And when you're making a mandrito, you uncover yourself. So you've got your beat, you've got your half reverso, you have your falso not past guardia di faccia, and that turns into an uncovering mandrito that brings you back into porta di ferro stretta. All of that can be done in about a second or less. So that's all I've got to do. After I press my opponent, there's no footwork for me, other than the turns of the body. Once I get in range, I don't move again, hit that, strike the leg, strike the arm, and strike the head. Here I am. Although it is customary for us to retreat after we've wounded the opponent. Here, there's 3 wounds very quickly. This is done. Look at the mechanics here. This, that, look at how the body was used. Here, strike. This is hard. This is a hard hit. That'll really damage the hand. From here, you see I'm underneath of his arm. That's why I don't bring it over my shoulder. I'm under the arm. Now to hit his head, I have to get out from under the arm, uncover myself, and deliver the mandrito back into my guard. Like I said, all those hits happen so quickly because why? Because he tried to hit me. Because he came in so close to hit my face, I can hit his leg without, a little closer. So yeah, you have to actually see that. If he comes in so close to hit my face, I can hit his leg without moving. I don't need a step. And before he gets a chance to do anything with that, I've hit it. And before he gets a chance to do anything else, I've hit him again. Those are quick. Okay. Somebody once asked me, they said, well, how do you get all those 3 cuts in there so that they can't do something to you? Do it fast. You know, once I've reached my point inside the reach of his sword, which is for me 1 more step, I'm stopping. It's all on him now. He can either attack me or not. Now, so there's the, again, the falso beat here against that thrust. Eject that away from your face. If I do that and it's still anywhere near my face, he could thrust it in my face before I can get a chance to do anything else. You have to clear that, and it's this way. The hand is it's not lifted. It's right where it was. My hand is as low as it was when I began. I make a quick turn of the wrist to knock that away with the double A. this becomes that half reverso. Now this is descending. Yeah, you could go with a tondo, but your point can go wide on that. And I think that's not what he's looking for. He didn't say that. He said a half reverso, not a half reverso tondo. So it's down here. Now, here, that arm, you strike that just up inside here, not past guardia di faccia. Now, he says here, he's a little vague. He says throw a cut that makes you fall back into portaferra stretta. Is it a tramazzone? That's a cut. No. How do we know that? What is Manciolino's opinion about when you will use a tramazzone? No one? When you use a buckler. Manciolino was of the opinion that a tramazzone is only used when you're using a buckler. So it's not here. He wants a powerful cut. And you've got the time, you see. When I've done that, I've got the time to make a powerful mandrito and finish it there. Not a light tramazzone. So don't feel that after you've hit that, struck that, hit that, that you have to like rush yourself with a cut here. No, hit that, uncover yourself, and throw the mandrito. Again, it could be on the squalembrato line or the fendente line, it doesn't matter. But it will be a mandrito. Okay, and if you want, he does specify my guard. He doesn't specify that person's guard. If he wanted to start that way, he could thrust from there with a half step. It's kind of a narrow position, and he could, without even gathering, launch the cut. That's possible, è possibile. Or he could be in colunga alta, and as I press him, he can make a passing step. That's possible too. Those are all workable. Doesn't change anything. He could even be in portaferra stretta with his right foot forward and pass his left foot. As I press him, again, that doesn't really affect the thing that I do. It all still works. I don't care what guard he is in, and Manciolino did not specify.